I think that's hard to do.
It's very
That's hard
difficult
to
for
do.
most.
It's like turning off everything you know.
But I think it also depends on your intrinsic biases. You need to be aware of like where your knobs are skewed, because everyone seems to have their own little different preferences shifted here and there, right?
You know, one thing I noticed, people come up to a system to listen to it, and like, you got to wonder, like, what's their preconceived notions on it? Like, they're coming up to say, you know, what are you looking for when you come up to it? And I think everybody has a different plan, right? You're coming up to something, putting on a headphone, listening to speakers, whatever you listen to. Yeah, you know, or even sometimes you walk up to a person and he's got a voice that doesn't match his face. The point is that, right? It's like, you know, you have a preconceived notion for whatever reason of what something might sound like. And most of the time it probably doesn't, right? Or it's not matching whatever you're looking for. And I mean, you know, let's talk about that.
Like seeing horn speakers and they don't sound horny to you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, non-horny horn speakers. Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
It is a thing, though. And trouble is most people are typically entirely unaware, but they have a lot of cognitive shortcuts that they take as a human typically to try to minimize the effort required to live their life. And what that means is when you come up to a product, you kind of sort of have an expectation oftentimes preformed how it's going to sound, whether or not you're going to like it and stuff like that. Whether or not you're really consciously aware of it, that could be entirely different. Most people probably aren't. And it could very well be that they think this isn't going to sound the way they want. And what that means is it increases the likelihood it won't sound the way they want. And conversely, it works as well. And I think that's a big portion of the reason why you get those early show impressions or early impressions for a product that everyone's like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. And then a month, 2-3 months later, it fades into the sunset and you never hear about it again.
The reality of it is, I think it probably boils down to experience. And I mean, we bring up experience a lot on our channel, but you know, if you already heard a lot of things, it's probably not going to shock you too much when this thing that you never heard comes up to you. But there's a lot of times when you could too. And I think it boils down to how many different things you've ever tried in your lifetime that you have a subset of knowledge.
Well, experience can be bad though in this case, you know, because you've heard it so many times. You're like, this brand, X brand. You're like, and you think it sounds one particular way. Maybe
true.
They change.
True.
They change.
Mm-hmm.
The things don't stay the same for 100 years, and a lot of people run into that problem where they're
they
like
stereotype things.
Yeah, it's like, no, I tried it 20 years ago. I don't even need to look at it again.
Yeah, right.
It could be completely different now.
Yeah.
So.
And we see this at shows too. We see people, sometimes you kind of see that moment when their mind kind of flips and they come into it thinking this is how it sounds or this is how something does something, and they have an expectation and they're almost showing up to try to prove it to themselves that they're right. That in these years past they're not delusional. And sometimes you see them kind of like they have like a curious look. They're like, oh, actually, and sometimes they'll talk to you and they'll talk you through it and they'll talk about what happened. And I used to think this about this product and actually turns out I was wrong. I must have got a bad showing and, I talked myself into it or something like that. Happens a lot. It's very easy for people to do. And yeah, experience actually could be damaging to some extent. If you listen to so many things and you gather this image, you take the shortcut and you think, well, presumably it's going to be just like this.
Yeah, I mean, experience is good, obviously, but the way it could be bad is if you don't view every new thing with an open mind.
Yeah.
You come in, preconceived notions, full blast. Well, you're obviously not going to like it if you thought everything else.
You're sort of tripping on yourself at that point.
Yeah.
Well, the classic one, I guess, you'd make is Apple. As a company, there tends to be a lot of loyal followers that think everything Apple does is the best thing ever. And the trouble with that is they'll typically give a favorable review to something new that they make, even if it's not good. Or the more classic thing people make fun of is like they talk positively about something Apple did that's like innovative or whatever that everyone else has been doing for time. So that's the intrinsic bias that could be problematic.
Yeah, that's the opposite direction. You're making excuses for bad design
Both
decisions.
sides could be a problem, right?
Yeah.
You got to have an open mind, but you also have to have the experience to know, has this been done before? Is this innovative, unique, interesting, or what should I know about this to be able to found my decision on whether or not this is good or not? I
also think it depends on what your current status quo is. Like, what do you listen to right now? What you got at home? What you're used to?
Well, that's the thing. If you have just basic stuff and you come to a show and you hear all the best stuff and you're like, I mean, you don't even know what to think. Right? You're
And that
like,
goes for anything. I mean, you could be, audibly overwhelmed, visually overwhelmed with going to Best Buy and looking at all the TVs. And
No, it's easy.
it's like, okay, there's 50 TVs on the wall, all playing the same thing.
Yeah.
Which one do I pick?
well, that's why
I mean, you really got to know what you're doing.
That in the stores they have store modes. And you could turn it on usually
Yeah.
at home, and all it does is just crank everything up.
It sounds about
It
right.
makes it misleading. It makes the
right.
picture look how most people for a short duration think is better.
Yeah, you're running the
Pretty much
TV,
just
all TVs
oversaturated.
running on the fringe of their capabilities.
Yeah,
It's
everything's
like,
just
it's not really
saturation
right.
all the way up.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
But it
completely
looks more
wrong.
impressive when you're going side by side, and it's
Yeah.
super overwhelming.
Yeah, sound tends to be like that too. People notice the initial sparkles and crackles and high frequency energy, and then you live with that for a few days, and now all of a sudden your ears are bleeding. So yeah, it can go the wrong way real quick.
Yeah, I tried that. I turned the store mode on my TV one time and just see it. And I'm like, you can't take it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is terrible.
Yeah, well, you think about it, they're compensating for the lighting in the store, which is probably like a shit ton. I mean, the background, you're listening, well, you're watching it in a dark room, usually
Yeah.
at night, right? And they got full-on freaking fluorescent lighting in this store that's designed to...
You don't have fluorescent light in your house, most likely.
It's got to be brutal to combat that.
Yeah.
It's that whole, trying to just get above that level of light. You really got to crank it. But anyway, bottom line is that, people, I mean, it's easy to do. It's very easy to have a preconceived notion of what you're expecting and also what you're after. And that's okay, that's okay. But yeah, I don't know how would you like explain to people like have an open mind needs to be expanded on.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you really describe this to someone.
Because people don't always understand, I think, that when you say that terminology,
Really?
particularly if you don't
No,
speak
they don't.
English or there's not an English there's not a what you call translation to that. Have
I
an
think
open mind.
you kind of need like a base foundation of understanding for what that is for that to be effective.
Yeah.
But really the way to go is you need to continuously reevaluate everything. And again, there's a lot more description that's required to understand what that means, but you need to understand that it's possible your assumptions are wrong. It's possible that what you thought about a product was wrong because you were misled for one reason or another. It sounded bad because of the amp that was on. It sounded good because of the DAC that was on. It could be a bunch of different reasons.
It'd kind of be like going into an ice cream shop. I'm thinking about that because ice cream's now it's summer, but and I kind of like ice cream.
Oh.
But you go in an ice cream shop, and you go and you're going to taste their vanilla, and you have to pretend like you've never tasted vanilla before.
Almost.
Or at least say, okay, well, I know kind of what this tastes like, but I'm going to pretend, even though I've had 1,000 different vanillas, that I don't really know what vanilla tastes like. Let's see what I think about this, and then judge it on that basis. I think that's hard to do.
It's very
That's hard
difficult
to
for
do.
most.
It's like turning off everything you know.
But I think it also depends on your intrinsic biases. You need to be aware of like where your knobs are skewed, because everyone seems to have their own little different preferences shifted here and there, right? So maybe one thing to you matters a lot more than other people, but you need to discover for yourself whether or not that's the case. And it's a bit of an issue. It's hard for people to do. You almost need to look at products from like a reviewer's perspective. Not, do I like this product, but rather, is this a good product? And then, should I like it or do I like it? Does this fit somewhere into what I'm looking for? You kind of like, I think for me at least, it's helpful to ignore the price of a product first. Like, of course, it's difficult.
Price biases you hard.
Ignore the price and then say, is this a good product? And then say, is it good? Is it reasonable for the price? Is there any value proposition to be had there? Because people look at a price and they'll immediately say, it's either too cheap or too expensive, so I either do or do not like it.
Yeah. It's kind of like walking in and looking at new homes or apartments or something, right? You walk into a place and like every one of them is different. They're all laid out different. Bathrooms, different places, different size rooms, you name it, flooring, shit. There's a million things when you first walk in a home that you don't even see because you're overwhelmed with just the basic design of the house and
Sure.
if it's going to fit you. You think about it, and then you buy the thing or an apartment, you move in and you go, I never saw that, I didn't see that, I didn't see that crack in the window, I didn't see that crack, I didn't see, oh, the paint's wrong. I mean, there's 100 things you want to, all of a sudden you see the flaws that you never caught when you first looked in it. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like, there's a lot going on there that needs to be absorbed to make a real judgment. And that's
I guess that's a visual example.
yeah.
Because especially in homes, a lot of times people are moving up. They're buying a home that costs more, that's bigger, that's nicer than what they had. That's very common. And that's a more problematic direction to move, because then it's not about value, really. Like, you're not really considering it in the normal pretenses. You're saying, well, I could afford this house. And you're looking at what you're getting compared to what you have.
But if you walked in a house and you didn't know the price,
Yeah.
I bet you could make a pretty good guess by looking around.
Usually,
You know?
that would be the better
It's
approach.
like, oh,
I
this is
think.
expensive. Or, oh, this isn't too. This shouldn't be expensive.
Well, yeah.
I've looked at a few too many houses.
Yeah, I hear you.
And in my experience, when you see other people looking at houses, what they're looking for is kind of like almost shocking to me.
Yeah.
They come into the kitchen or whatever is an important area of the house for them, and they're impressed. And that's trouble. Saying, wow, look at this. These cabinets are nice.
So they're
Countertop.
ignoring everything else.
Right, but they're not paying attention. These cabinets really aren't that expensive. In the scheme of the house, they're not that significant of a contributor for the total home. And so if you're just wowed by the cabinets or the countertop, well,
Yeah.
you're missing
You're
out.
missing
Like,
the big picture.
You're looking at the countertop and saying, I could have this kitchen that looks a certain way. But you're not taking into context, is this built in a good manner? Is this going to serve my needs? Does it have the room layout and size and whatnot that I need? You kind of could overlook things because you're impressed by some initial impression.
Well, I guess it comes down to that emotion thing. It's powerful,
Yeah.
good or bad. You come in super happy, excited. Oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Well, you're biased in that direction, so you're just looking for the good things, right?
Sure.
And if you, I hate this thing, and you look at it, and then you're just all you're gonna do is look
Right.
for the bad.
Focus on the hate.
You're not gonna say anything good about it, right?
Yeah. And overall, it might not really matter in the big picture, or something that could be resolved. And yet you're still hating it because of that. Yeah. Which,
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people don't choose homes or cars or whatever because of
Something
same
silly.
reason.
The way this room
Yeah,
was
something.
painted this color, there was wallpaper.
Where it's something you can resolve. It's no
Yeah,
big deal.
$500 and you
Yeah,
fix it,
Yeah,
right?
right. Big deal. Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo.
Lob it off. I mean, knock the wall down. It's
Yeah,
just a
well,
wall.
yeah.
But I'm just saying, right? It's just simple things where people, you're right.
Could be a floor
They'll make choices or
something.
decisions based on criteria that really doesn't matter as
Yeah,
much.
you're hung up on the wrong thing usually.
Yeah. So anyway, something to consider when you're trying out new anything.
Yeah, it's more of a personal discovery
Not much
process.
refrigerator, so.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's different.
Refrigerators, that's a factor still too, though.
Yeah, we'll have to kick back to you trying refrigerators back in the day. Right?
Yeah.
Our video.
I'd
From,
like to do like a 2-hour refrigerator video.
maybe Douglas could put a snippet in there of you checking video garage door.
No, what-
refrigerator doors.
What's more interesting though, I think, are ranges.
Ranges, yeah.
Oh, the knobs and everything.
No, knobs are nice.
And
yeah.
the clocks.
Well, when you have nice knobs, are nice.
Yeah.
It's hard to find good knobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta go. Thanks everyone for watching. Thumbs us up. And don't forget to subscribe. We need to make 20,000 better a year. We only have a few months to go. So we're going to need a lot of you.
Yeah, you're
can
going to need to
subscribe.
do some
Yeah,
subscribing.
in fact, do triple subscribe.
Yeah,
Don't hit it
yeah.
again. Don't hit it again.
Keep
once
making
subscribe.
accounts and subscribe
Yeah,
on
yeah.
those.
Get your family and friends to subscribe.
Yes.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
No? Nothing? What's the problem over here?
I don't know. I was hoping you'd have something to say.
It looked like you were kind of.
I went null in the last 10 seconds. I didn't have anywhere to
I
come
mean, I know
out.
what you're talking about.
I mean, I could talk continuously
All
if
right.
you want.
Well,
but
anyway,
it seemed
yeah.
like I had a bit of a
no,
ramble.
that's good. Yeah. Yeah.